Hello, Phil Hinkle here from ProDad. Today I have another in our series of tutorials on ProDrenalin V2 We promised a few advanced tutorials, and here is the second one in the series. The first one we talked about the storyboard feature and how you could use that to actually build a video with almost everything you need except titles and transitions and how to export to YouTube. Well, now that you know how to do that and you're good at it, let's learn about some of the new features in ProDrenalin V2 that allow you to do more extensive color correction. Let's dive in and see what we got. First, I have a couple of clips already loaded in. This particular clip, we're just going to kind of go through a whole bunch of different things over here and try stuff and see how it affects our clip and see if we can make this clip a little bit more vibrant. It's kind of flat right now. This particular clip is a motorcycle ride. I believe the guy that sent it to me is from Australia. We're going to try and bring some of the greens and the blue out and calm down some of this clay color that's all over everything. And then on this clip, we're going to do something fun. We're going to show you how to do a keyframe with your effects. So let's get started on our first clip. Back in our first tutorial, the basic tutorial, I showed you how to use the color enhancers up here. If you click on intensive, it would improve your footage just a little bit. You could click activate and it would get started. Then you click intensive and it would do a little bit more. And if you look over here in our effects, you can actually see here some things changed. If I turn that off, you see that goes away, and I click here intensive, and then those are modified, the dynamics and brightness balancing. We're not going to mess with these two, because that's part of this functionality. We've already dove into that. We're going to play with some of the other things. Okay, over here on the left are some presets that can come in real handy. This first one is a camera reset. So if I were to double click on that, it would come up here and it would turn off the settings that I have selected for my camera. That could be real handy if you're working with multiple clips. Or if you selected a camera and didn't really like the result and you wanted to try a different camera. The effects reset will actually, by double clicking there, it will reset everything over here and save you the trouble of having to go through and turn stuff off if you didn't like the way something happens, or if you've just gotten into the color grading of a clip and messed it up so bad you don't want to try and go back and fix. You just want to start over. That's the way to do it. Next down the list is black and white. Obviously, these are going to be some black and white presets. If I click here, see, it turns black and white. Extra hard, it's going to be very contrasty. If we were to come over here in our color settings, we would see some brightness and contrast has been modified over here. Again, if I want to reset my effects, I can click Effects Reset. Everything gets turned off and put back to default. There's even a night shot mode if you want to try that. There's a tiny bit of color retained there, but it looks kind of like it was shot at night with the lens wide open. And there's just different settings here, kind of give you that dreamy look. Experiment around, and you can obviously see over in our color correction side what is going on with each of those presets. You can see how the sliders move, and you can actually use some of these presets to get a feel for how the functionality here works. I'm going to reset my effects and get rid of those. Next, I want to show you the color effects. There's a few in here. Basic colors. I want to decrease my exposure, so it makes it a little darker. Increase my exposure. It's going to make it a little bit lighter. Let me show you one thing over here since I'm in there, is when you're working over here, if you don't want to use these settings to reset everything, whenever you have something activated in your color correction or your color grading, you will have this X appear, which means there's something turned on, and if you want to get rid of it, just click the X, and we go back to our default just like that. It's another quick and easy way within ProDrenalin V2 to turn off your settings and start all over. There's a cold color temperature. If I click there, you'll see it takes on a slight bluish tinge, which would make it cold. If you select the warm, it makes it a little bit warmer. It adds a little bit of that yellowish red sunset kind of color to it. Color shift just moves some things around and gives you a little bit of a head start on some tweakability over here. Let's undo all of those once again. Film looks. Here's where it gets a little crazy. Watch what happens here. I click on autumn and it gives it a fall look. Click on Bros. I don't know where that came from, but it sounds cool. And it gives you a little bit more contrast and calms colors down a little bit. DUT. It's very washed out and gives you this weird film look. Jeans. What's that do? It kind of calmed it down and darkened a little bit, and it gives it a little bit of a hazy effect, it seems. Morning. Kind of like a morning sunrise shot. You got that extra color, kind of like from the golden hour. Nature. It's supposed to enhance colors from the greens and the yellows and the reds. This shot's full of greens, so obviously it's going to enhance the greens and kind of leave everything else alone. Night shot, once again, we can make it look like a night shot. You see it's got a little bit of a vignette around it. I bet if I close this down, you can see here my vignette is turned on. We'll get into that in a little bit. I'm going to open that back up. Paris, what's Paris look like? Evidently in the film industry is a look that people use for certain things. And our last one is spring. So now we've been through all those color settings to kind of see what they do and learn how things go. Let's close that down. There are some layouts over here. And what this does is it gives you a 50% layout. And the reason this is curved is because I've got camera correction on here. If I turn that off, it goes back to square. It's just showing you how it's unwarped, and see my horizon's pretty straight there. You could do 75%, and Kaleidoscope does some funky things with it. Personally, I would not use that for much. I'm going to reset that. Optics has some anamorphic settings in it. I don't use that kind of stuff, and it's not something that in my line of work with video that I've ever really delved into, because I like to just take what comes in the camera and edit it. Next up is Spotlight. If I double click on Afternoon Sun, you can see it has put a lens flare or a hotspot right into my footage. And on our spotlight selection, you can see it has created a spot. It has the spot size, it's adjustable, and the diffusion. We will dive into that and use that for ourselves here in a little bit. A couple of these others, bottom light, which puts a light down here. You can see it changed. A dark spot, it kind of makes it dark with like one light shining down. In a nature photo like this, I cannot see a lot of use for that. But if you've got an indoor shot that maybe has a spotlight, or it's in a venue somewhere, that could be kind of a handy little function there. Same with the lamp, could be used in certain types of footage. This particular shot, probably not good. Although, let's just try something here. Location, let's see if I can center that. Look at that, I could highlight my church with just that light, change the spot size a little bit. That's about as big as it goes. Diffusion. I could see that could have a use in the right situation. Red stop, it just basically puts a spot in the center of your screen, and you can see over here they've colored it red. And a top light puts one up top that kind of washes the top of your scene in sunlight. Last but not least on our list, let's reset those effects, is the vignetting. This is something that I actually do in a lot of my videos. I learned a long time ago, if I take and put a very subtle oval vignette on my footage, it makes my colors pop and sort of gives it that filmic look. Now granted, this is a huge vignette, and I would not use it anything that size in real life. It would be much smaller. It would be very subtle. I mean, this is like not there, and I would normally use something maybe like that with just the slightest hint in the corners that you're on a film camera and you're getting that vignetting. And you can also do it just an edge one where it's around the outsides, or you can do the oval. So that's all of our presets. Once again, when you double click on something here, it activates predetermined amounts of colors or layout or vignetting or spotlight in our advanced settings over here. So let's turn off everything there, and we're back to our original imagery. Now granted, we could have used some of these to our benefit, but I am going to start from scratch, and I'm going to go down through some of these settings. I may not hit on all of them, but I am going to go through some of this and help make this imagery go from flat to have some pop to it. In our basic color settings, we have a white balance where we can use the color picker right here Click on that and then click on something white, and it will do some white balance adjustments to try and make your scene know what the proper white is. My colors here aren't that far off as far as color goes. I'm not going to worry about that. I can mess with my exposure. I can lighten it up. I can darken it. I can adjust my contrast. I can make it more contrasty or less contrasty. And this deals with the whole image. I can make it more bright. I can make it less bright. And I can up my saturation and lower my saturation. These 4 filters right here are pretty much what was available in ProDrenalin version 1. There's lots more stuff down here where I can get more selective with what I'm going to put contrast or brightness or saturation to. So I'm going to reset all of these. So if my basic colors, if I want, I can just click on the X and I've reset back to default. Next thing down is the tune. I can select warmer if I want to make my thing warmer or cooler, just like we had over here in our colors. I'm going to turn that back off. I can use my hue slider and change things that way with the saturations levels here. Again, in this particular shot, it's not something that is going to do the tricks that I want, so I'm going to turn that back off. The tone curve and the split toning, that's where we're starting to get into the sections that will help me with my imagery here. The blacks. What happens if I start to adjust the blacks? You can see parts of my image aren't really changing that much, but parts that are darker are. So if I wanted to crush my blacks, which gives it a contrasty look, it's very popular, I can slide that down a little bit and it gives it a little bit more pop. Next is my shadows. A lot of times in color grading, blacks are your darks, shadows are your midtones, lights are your brighter colors, obviously, and whites are white. This was affecting the really dark colors. See along here, it's really pushing those and crushing those colors a lot more. So I'm just going to push that a tiny bit. My shadows, the same thing. Now I'm going to take all my midtones. Look how so much of my picture, which is in the midtone of the color spectrum, changes. This is where we're doing a lot of work. I like it a little punchier, so I'm going to push that down a little bit. My lights. And obviously things that are lighter are going to get brightened up or darkened down. I'm actually going to push that a little bit to the light side, so I've got a more contrasty. I've got some darker sections. The midtones are crushed a little bit. The lights are brought up. Whites, if I mess with this, there's not a whole lot in here that's getting affected. You can see a little bit in the church. You see there's some white coloring down inside of our road there, maybe a little bit up here in the sky. You can see how that affects it. A lot of times those will get you in trouble, so I'm going to set that one back to the default. All right, let's leave that the way it is and the split toning. Here's where it gets fun. And this is where it may take you a few attempts to wrap your head around what's going on. Bear with me. We're going to try a few things and you'll see how it works. And then when you get out there and try it yourself, you will understand it more. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to push my saturation up a little bit so I can see what's going on. Now, see this hue? This is a slider. If you understand color wheels and how those work in the color correction world and in the print world, then this will make a little bit more sense to you. I'm going to take and I'm going to slide along here, and you can see my saturation slider changes based on whatever I'm above in my colors here. So in my shadows, which are the dark areas of my imagery, and here and back in here and there, this is what I'm affecting. If I put it on green, see a lot of those dark spots got a greenish hue to them. If I put it on blue, see a lot of those spots got a cooler blue temperature. I can push the saturation up if I want or pull it down. In my dark colors, I don't really want to mess with a whole lot. Maybe bring a little bit of the yellows out because I'm looking along here and I want to give a little more vibrancy to my grass. So maybe put just the tiniest little bit of yellow in there. This right here shows you what color you're actually on. And if you want to work with a direct color, you can use the color picker. So if I go over here and click on green, I'm working with the green it's found on this slider, and then I can adjust my saturation from here. I want to push that back down into that yellow zone just the tiniest little bit and push that up to give a little bit more color brightness to my grass. Midtones. This is where we're going to adjust a lot of our colors in here in the screen. So again, The way I like to use it, I'm going to push my saturation up, and you can see on the far left of our hue is the red, so it's finding all of this stuff in this spectrum of the color wheel, and that's what I'm adjusting on. So the way I've learned to work with this is push my saturation up so I can really see what I'm working on, and then pick the color by using my slider that I really want to work on. And I kind of want to work on these corn crops and these harvested fields to give them a little bit more pop. So I'm going to pick a red somewhere in there and push that up. See how it's getting a little bit more pop to it there? I think I'm going to leave it right there. And the lights, same again. Let's push our saturation up. There's not a whole lot of lights in this imagery, so you know what? I'm going to just turn that off and leave it alone. Next up is our channel. This is where we can adjust the exposure, contrast, and saturation of a particular color, and this is where knowing the color wheel will come in handy again. I'm not going to mess with the exposure, but I am going to mess with the contrast of the reds. Okay, if I push the red slider this way, you can see some of the colors. Wherever there's some red mixed into whatever's going on, it's getting more contrasty. Or I can slide it down and it makes my greens pop a little bit more. All right, so what if I drag the reds down this way a little bit and then push my greens another direction? It's all reactions on your color wheel, and I would challenge you to go out and learn a little bit about that if you don't understand that. And this is really just a balancing act once you understand it to figure out what is going on in your footage. I'm actually kind of liking the way that looks. For those of you that know what a histogram is, we have a histogram up here where you can see your colors and know when you're about to blow something out or it's too dark, or how the balances are between the different colors in the spectrum and what you're doing. You can see your changes here moving up here in your histogram. Again, it's one of those things. I'm not going to go into how a histogram works. If you need to learn that, there's plenty of tutorials on YouTube, or just Google it and you'll find some great histogram tutorials. Saturations. Okay, well, let's push the saturation on my reds just a little bit. It makes my crops pop a little more. How about the greens? We can overdo it, but we're not doing too bad. We're giving it a little bit of pop there. The blues, there's not a lot of blue, but by doing that, we're actually really, because of the color wheel, we're messing with a lot of things. So I'm going to pretty much leave that one alone. I'm actually kind of liking the way that looks. Okay, we've covered a lot of those things. I'm going to come back up here and I'm going to drop my color and minimize it so I don't see as much. The layout, I'm not going to worry about. We learned about the layout over here, and I'm just going to leave that the way it is. Before we get into vignetting, let's go to the spotlight. I'm going to have a little fun with that. I'm going to create a spot, and I'm going to make it, I want it to be a really warm color. So I'm going to make it like one of these colors here. See how I did that? I picked my eyedropper and I picked the crop out in the field. That's the color. All right, so now I've got to make a size. There it is in the middle of my screen. You can see how that would be a sunset type of sunspot, and with the shadows of my church falling this way, that means my sun needs to be somewhere back up over here. So I'm going to take my location part and I'm going to slide that over with my x-axis and up with my y-axis to where it's just barely on the screen. If I use the aspect ratio, it can make it a flat sun, or it can make it a tiny, or it can make it a tall sun. For what I want to do, I'm going to make it a little flatter, kind of like it's going down behind the horizon there. Now let's go play with this diffusion. If I slide this out, then that burst is going to fill more and more of my scene up, and that's way overdone. So you can get in trouble fast by pushing this. So I'm going to tone that back a little bit. I'm actually going to move that up a little bit more where it's almost off the screen. Then I can up my diffusion a little bit more. And so now you get the hint that there's a sun back here, and it's what's making my shadow over here. See how we've improved this shot? If I come up here to my horizontal compare and click on it, look at the difference before and after. Obviously, my after, I may have overdone it a little bit, but it's all for the sake of this tutorial. In fact, I know I've overdone it. I've got way too much saturation in a few spots. So let's go back up to our colors, come back down to our saturations and our channels down here. And let's neutralize some of these just a tiny bit and calm them down, where it's not quite so obvious that we've modified our picture. It does kind of have an HDR look, high dynamic range look, so I'm going to leave it the way it is. Let's go back up and close down our color options. And we've got a spotlight up there. We've added our sun. Now let's have a little fun with the vignette. In this one image, this one clip, we have pretty much gone through the entire color correction process. Let's go to the vignetting. I told you I like a vignette on some of my imagery to give it some pop. So let's build one. First thing we want to do is dial the angle up until we start seeing those edges go dark. You know, we can do a whole lot, but we don't want to go crazy with it. Let's be tasteful here. Okay, that's like none, so I'm seeing just the tiniest little bit there, kind of like that. You can make it really sharp or you can make it really soft. I want it to be very, very subtle and understated. This is how you change it from the oval to the square. I'm going to leave it on my oval because that's what I want. And then you could adjust it left and right if you needed to. I want it centered so it looks like the edges are all uniform, like I had a lens that I was shooting through. Okay, I have done just about every option in our color grading functionality within ProDrenalin version 2 Plus. Again, horizontal compare before and after. May have overdone it just a little bit for sake of a comparison, but you can see the difference, the flexibility that we have in version 2 Plus to do some really cool color correction. I'm going to move on to the next clip now. Let's have some fun with this motorcycle clip. I'm not going to go through all the procedures. I'm just going to go through a few of them to find what I like, and we can see what's possible. First thing I want to do is get rid of some of this clay look. This is my goal, is to clean this up and make this part of the image not look so dirty and sort of hide the fact that everything in this image is coated with this red clay. First thing I'm going to do is come to my shadow area and turn my saturation up so I can get to what I want to fix. Next is my hue. Now you can see here by using this slider I'm pulling a lot of stuff that's on that motorcycle into my colors that are being accentuated by my saturation. So if I leave that there, pull my slider down, it calms down some of those colors. Next is my midtones. Let's do the same thing once again. Push the shadow up, and now you see in the midtone other things are coming alive, but this is not being touched because that's the shadows. This is where we get into the power of really making this work. So the midtones, let's play with some greens here. Maybe see if we can work on our trees in the background. Slide that down. Actually, it's looking like working in that same color spectrum is allowing me the ability to further clean up some of my colors and get them balanced back out. The lights I'm not going to worry about. Let's move down to our channel. I believe this is where we really can start making a difference. In my exposure, let's play with that on this one. Let's push that up toward the red. Again, we start bringing that red back in, so we don't want that. I'm going to slide it just the tiniest bit down. I'm going to move my green slider a little to the right, pulling a little extra color into my trees and the blue. I'm going to slide that a little bit to the left and add a few things back in. The contrast, let's play with that a little bit. Now look at this. When I slide this to the right, look how it's cleaning up the motorcycle even more. See that? I'm going to turn that off. See how the motorcycle still is better, but it's a little dirty. I'm going to slide that to the right. Watch this. It's really cleaning that up, but look at all the other repercussions that it's having. My sky is bluer, my green is greener, and I'm still retaining a lot of the color here in the plants on the side of the road, which is exactly what I want. So I'm going to push the green. Now it's actually putting green into my motorcycle, which I don't want. If I slide this over, it's actually adding dirt back in. I don't want to do that, so I'm going to bring it back to neutral and leave it. Let me set that to 0. What happens if I work with my blue? It's making the whole scene sort of cold, which I don't want. Now if I push it away toward the yellow side just a little bit, I'm not really adding any dirt back in on my motorcycle, but I'm making these other colors pop a little bit. This is getting real close to what I want for this image. Saturations, let's play with those just a tiny little bit here quick. We can now make that grass a little bit more vibrant and come back to closer to the colors it was before. Same with my greens. I can push my greens up a little bit to give them some saturations, and my blues, make the sky a little bluer if I want. Don't really want to go crazy with that, but a little bit. Again, up here in the histograms, I may be breaking a few rules with some of this, but it's for the sake of demonstration and showing you how these sliders work. Actually, overall, I'm kind of liking the way this image looks compared to the original. See how dirty this was up here and he's just caked in red clay? Well, it's a lot cleaner down here, and the colors are just popping a little bit more. Once again, I probably overdid it a little bit, but for the sake of showing you how this stuff works, it's really helpful to do that. So I'm going to leave this one alone. I could probably dial some of the saturation down just a little bit. Let's just dial some down on that red. It's a little too much. I kind of like that a little better. It looks a little more realistic now. Okay, I'm happy with that. I'm not touching anymore. Let's move on. And the last thing I want to show you is how to keyframe an effect where you can make it ramp up or move around on your screen. I'm going to use this skydiving clip, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my spotlight function. May as well open that now. I'm going to make a sun move up from the bottom to the top. It's not going to look natural, I know that, but this is for the sake of showing you how it's done. First thing I need to do is create my spot. So I'm going to come over and pick that white that I want to use for my sun, my fake sun. I'm going to blow it up a little bit, add a little diffusion. The next thing I want to do now is where we start our keyframes. Right down here on my location, there's a little tiny clock. If I click there, then you can see we're in keyframe mode, and this is very similar to any program that allows you to add keyframes for your special effects, from Premiere, Edius, Vegas. All those allow you to do it. It's all very similar functionality. So if you've done it before, you will be very familiar. First thing I want to do is I want to move my spot to the bottom down here. So I'm going to move it to the left and down. Okay, I have set my first keyframe. Notice my timeline cursor's at the beginning of my in and out point here. Now I'm going to move my in and out point down to the end, and I am going to now move my sun up to the top. So I'm going to slide that up like that. Now I should be able to come over here and notice my sun is at the bottom. I'm going to slide this to the right, and look at that. The sun moves up. See that? How cool is that? So you can actually use this functionality. You could use it to make a color fix fade in over time. Say you had a color temperature change where something went from like an indoorish color temperature to an outdoorish color temperature, then you could ramp up the changes from one fix to the other, and it would be seamless to your viewer. So that's how you do keyframes. It's super easy and super fast. One last thing that I do want to show you, and I'm going to go back to my first clip for that, the aerial video clip of the church. What I've done is I've created this look that I like. Well, perhaps I took 4 or 5 different shots the day I was out filming this. I don't want to try and configure every shot to look exactly like this and try and remember everything I did. So if I come down to the bottom over here and click on this green Add Preset button, I can add a preset. Going to click OK, and it has created a new preset up here. I'm going to call this Aerial Chapel. Okay, I've created my preset. Now, for the sake of proof of concept, I'm going to delete all of my filters. We're back to the original way. Okay, I brought my second shot in, double click on Aerial Chapel, boom, got it fixed. If I wanted to, for fun, let's come to our motorcycle clip, remove all of that. If I wanted to use that same setup on this clip because it was similar, I could click Aerial Chapel, and there it is. But obviously for this clip it's not good, so I'm going to take that back off. So that's in a nutshell some of the advanced features in ProDrenalin V2 Plus for the color grading and color correction. In the original tutorial we showed you how to do all the basic stuff. In the storyboard tutorial we showed you how to use the storyboard feature to actually build a video and also upload it to YouTube directly. Very simple to do. And then this tutorial showed you the new color grading presets and also effect filters and ways you can tweak your footage over on the right. That pretty much sums up all the big new things in advanced functionality in ProDrenalin V2 Plus. So with these 3 tutorials you should have a good understanding of all the new features and how ProDrenalin V2 Plus works. So get out there, put it to work for your videos, and make them better. Thanks, and you have a great day.